Back here, 615 Sessions podcast, not from the DraftKings Sportsbook studios. We're actually at the radio studio today because your boy had to do some stuff on the fly, but it's lucky that I've got some good friends in high places, such as Cam Wolfe from ESPN. He covers the Miami Dolphins, so you know we're going to talk a little bit about what the hell just happened over the course of Monday night. Cam, you look great. You're fresh off a pump. You're trying to get beach body ready for Miami beach weather. You look fantastic. I'm very happy that you took some time to join us here on the pod.
Absolutely, man. I gotta pop on my man Buck. Things going on, crossing both of our beats. I want to chop it up. So definitely want to get the real from you about Tennessee, and I'll give you what I know about Miami, and we'll just keep it real on this thing.
Yeah, a little bit of crosstalk. Ain't nothing wrong with it. So let's start in the obvious place. I will be the first one to ask the question. The hell are the Miami Dolphins thinking with this man, Cam? Because this has been an unmitigated disaster for not even a year. Isaiah Wilson was here in Tennessee. Now the Dolphins agree to trade for Isaiah. They trade away a 2022 seventh round pick. The Titans send to Miami with Isaiah a 2022 seventh round pick. The Titans get in return a 2021 seventh round pick. So they're having to trade away draft capital, take a cap hit just to get rid of this man. What the hell is Brian Flores doing?
Man, I've never seen a descent so rapid as from a first round pick as Isaiah Wilson. It's crazy just watching from the outside. But I guess from the Dolphins' perspective, they're thinking that you can't buy lower than this. This is rock bottom for a guy like Isaiah Wilson. First round pick talent wise last year. Obviously, he has a lot of issues that he has to fix before he gets to Miami. But I think their thought process is, if we can fix him, and that's huge if, this is the guy that can potentially compete for a starting role for us on the right side of that offensive line. We're essentially getting them for the true cost is the guaranteed money left on the deal, which I believe was about $4 million left. Yeah. So essentially taking a $4 million bet that they can fix Isaiah Wilson. And I think the two things from the Miami perspective that they're betting on is that Brian Flores has a relationship with Isaiah Wilson. They're both from Brooklyn. They both went to the same high school, Poly Prep. They've known each other for years. There's other relationships on the Dolphins staff with Isaiah Wilson. So they're hoping they can connect with him in ways that Tennessee wasn't able to. Also, one of his teammates who was sort of a little bit of a mentor for him, Solomon Kinley, is a rookie guard for the Dolphins as well. So they're hoping that getting him with some people that he's comfortable with, that he's been around, can help him realize his opportunity before he completely screws it up. So the big thing is it's up to Isaiah. All the connections in the world don't matter if the guy doesn't want it or is disciplined enough to play pro football. And clearly he wasn't as a rookie. He's got a second chance and maybe a last chance in Miami. And, essentially it's a low risk gamble. If it doesn't work out, they get rid of him and they just take a $4 million hit.
And the Titans were going to keep him around because of all of the guaranteed money that was tied up in it if the Dolphins or another team didn't take Isaiah Wilson off their hands. It's been an unmitigated disaster here in Tennessee. And, you want to, Cam, you and I were 21 years old at one time. Neither of us were millionaires at the time that we were 21 years old. So you want to be a little bit understanding about the situation and who Isaiah Wilson might be had the circumstances been different. Obviously, he comes in a bizarre year amidst a global pandemic. He's put on the COVID list here twice in a way that completely isolates him from the team, puts him in a position where he cannot socialize, he cannot interact. And so he goes out and he gets in trouble with things like the DUI, where he's doing donuts in the middle of Charlotte Pike here in downtown Nashville because he's out for margaritas one night because he's got nothing else to do. So you want to kind of temper all of those things. But I guess, Cam, it's just the blatant and obvious, disrespecting of the franchise that drafted him, because the behavior continued. And not only did it continue, it's not like it was behind the scenes. Cam, this man is all over IG Live. He's posting stuff on Instagram. This man is sipping lean on the gram like it's no big deal. Like this is because I had John Robinson on the radio show about a week ago, and I was like, John, this is, I only bring this up again because it's all playing out so publicly. How, and I know it's early, and the Dolphins, I assume, are going to speak on a variety of different things today. I know you've got Zooms later later on in the afternoon. But I guess what should be the Dolphins' plan to mitigate this guy as a risk, given that they're plopping him in the middle of South Beach? And you know, I don't got to tell you, pandemic or not, South Beach is a whole different animal.
Well, I'll tell you what, he won't have less partying opportunities in Miami. He
Mm.
won't have less trouble in Miami. It's going to be the opposite way. It's really up to him, honestly, man. Like, I know Miami has a plan. The thing about Miami, especially in the Flores era, is they've taken chances on some of these guys who have been troubled and had, sort of been essentially discarded by their previous teams. They signed Mark Walton, who he had 3 arrests in like a 3-month period.
Yeah.
And it didn't end up working out. He got arrested again out here. Robert Nkemdiche, he was another guy similar to Isaiah Wilson, who was highly hyped coming out of college, but just didn't work out because he kept getting in trouble. Antonio Callaway, the same way. So they had made a routine of bringing in guys who don't cost much and trying to, work them out. So I know they'll have a plan. The 2 things I've heard early on about Isaiah Wilson is that they believe that he's not a bad kid, but he's a guy who the money and the attention and the adulation that comes with being a pro football player, he just couldn't handle it. And that's a lot of guys who handle it, who get that situation where you get $1 million, you get the attention of being a pro draft pick, and you just can't handle it, and it's too much, and you just go crazy with it. So the hope is you rein them in. I don't want to use the word babysit, but I'm sure there'll be some sort of, curfew, some sort of schedule where you try to keep them on track. You talked about keeping them busy, keeping them around the facility, telling them to go home later in the day and just go home and come back early in the morning. You might have to hold his hand a little bit that first year and hope that, he stays on track. But like I said, eventually, if Isaiah Wilson doesn't want this, if he wants to party, if he wants to, live the life without playing the life, then it's not going to work here. But they believe they have a plan, and he's going to start from the bottom. It's not like he's walking in and he's going to be the starting right tackle from day one. He's going to start as a bottom of the roster dude. He's going to prove himself off the field first, and then he can see if he can contribute on the field. And the hope is he's with people he's comfortable with, and maybe it'll get a little bit more buy-in. So I don't think the Dolphins have any expectations as far as this guy, being any type of contributor for them in 2021. I think it's just a flyer for them. If it works, it's a bargain. If it doesn't, then hey, just waste a little bit of money to see if something works.
And as our good friend and your teammate Diana Rossini pointed out, this man still has to pass a physical, which by no stretch of the imagination is a given for the trade to go through. So we will continue to monitor that situation. I think the thing that, and Cam, obviously, many of you know Cam Wolfe because he was here in Nashville for a year. He did an excellent job covering the Titans before the big homie TD, Teron Davenport, came in and broke out on the scene. So Cam has a little bit of unique insight into this organization. And this locker room, or the locker room when last you were here, guys like Taylor Lewan, guys like Corey Davis, players who are, it's a really, really good foundation of personalities and a solid culture that John Robinson and now Mike Vrabel have worked to build. And the thing that stood out to me, Cam, is as you're talking about, he's going to have the opportunity to be supported by his new organization. They are going to, as you said, maybe not necessarily babysit or handhold, but they're going to try and put him in a position where they can help him progress as not just a player, but as an adult human being, as a real life person that is so difficult to do, no matter what your profession is. But like I would talk to guys, whether it was, obviously not in the locker room this year, but via Zoom or outside of the confines of the Zoom calls that we're all now subjected to. And essentially they were tired of having their trust betrayed a little bit. Wilson would act out, whether it was the DUI, whether it was, being not respectful of the COVID-19 stipulations that were put on every team to make sure that we could get last season off the ground. And he would come back in, he would be apologetic, he would say all the right things, and then he would turn around and have some other misbehavior that would essentially fly in the face of everything that he had told the team, Vrabel, Robinson, the players who he had tried to support. So much so that I know that one of the offensive linemen had Isaiah turn on his location and share with this offensive lineman his location so that he could keep tabs on him no matter where he was, which I think, if this particular offensive lineman had an honest moment, would stress him the hell out, given everything that Isaiah Wilson was into on a regular basis. But I guess what kind of locker room, what kind of team culture is Isaiah walking into under Brian Flores and these Miami Dolphins?
Yeah, I think the thing that is interesting about the Dolphins is their main leader of the roster is Brian Flores. They're a really young team. I mean, Ryan Fitzpatrick was their leader. He's not going to be back this upcoming year. Nobody on the roster currently is over 30 years old.
Yeah.
Nobody on the roster is even 29 years old. So they are really, really young roster. So you're looking at a lot of young guys leading young guys. So you're hoping that Brian Flores and his culture, which has been built well here, trickles down to the young players and they hold everyone else accountable. And I mean, I know Mike Vrabel and John Robinson well, and I'm sure they had a culture there in Tennessee. So it's not like he's coming from a place that was wild and just let him do whatever and come into a more disciplinary. I think both of them have the importance of discipline. I think the hardest thing that I've heard from scouts and executives and coaches about the pre-draft prospect is evaluating character and evaluating love for football in sort of the parameters of interview. So I think when you have a situation where a guy is clearly showing some questionable character, clearly showing some questionable commitment, I think you have to have a real heart-to-heart with him and say, hey, you're at the bottom now. And I think that's tough to do when you're a first round pick. If you're Mike Vrabel or John Robinson, you can tell him, hey, you're making mistakes, but he knows he has first round money coming in. He knows you have commitment. The hope is this is a wake up call. I mean, he wasn't cut, but he was essentially cut, and saying a team's giving up on you after a year. You're going to walk into another organization who's not going to hand you anything. Hopefully he realizes that if I want this to continue, even if it's just the attention part or the allure of being a football player, if I want this to continue, then I need to turn my life around. So I think that they'll have a heart-to-heart with him. Brian Flores is really direct. He does not sugarcoat anything. I'm sure he is going to be, very straightforward with him. It helps that he knows him, so he doesn't have to worry about hurting his feelings because he knows how to act around him. And yeah, I think it's going to be they have very slim rope. So I don't think this is a situation where they bring him in and let him do everything he did in Tennessee and just keep him on the roster. I think he's probably already on strike one or strike two, depending on how they view the situation. And, he's got to realize that if he doesn't make it in Miami, I don't know if he gets another opportunity elsewhere. So I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see them sit down with them. You're going to see them set out of rules and parameters. You're going to see guys in the locker room that are, probably Solomon Kinley, like I mentioned, who's a year older than him. They've got a guy in Eric Flowers, who's sort of the veteran of that offensive line, will probably sort of be in charge of taking care of him as well. And they'll put everything they can around him to surround him. And then it's up to Isaiah. Yeah. Do you want this thing or not?
It's going to be fascinating to play out. I hope it's good. It's good if you're in the news business, baby, because he kept us on our toes down here. Cam Wolfe of ESPN with us on the 615 Sessions podcast. One more for you on the way out the door, because I know you got your own job to attend to. But Kyle Van Noy, you reported earlier in the offseason that he was a potential cap casualty. As of right now, he is still on the Dolphins roster. It's been reported widely that they are seeking a trade partner for his contract, that in this particular offseason going to be really, really difficult to move. I love him as a cap casualty pickup for the Titans on a short-term deal, given how they've struggled on defense, not just with their pass rush, but their inside linebackers were very, very underwhelming last year as well. And Kyle Van Noy can do both of those things. Should the Titans be interested in Kyle Van Noy if he does in fact become available?
Yeah, I think he makes sense for that defense at the right price. I wouldn't pay $12.5 million for him.
Yeah.
The Dolphins aren't going to pay $12.5 million for him. That's why he's out of here. So they're just trying to figure out the method. I know they're holding out for a trade. I think they want to see if a team wants to jump the line essentially to sign him. I know there's a couple of teams in that Belichick tree. He seems to be a perfect fit for those. The Giants is one. The Titans are one. The Patriots obviously are one. To an extent, the Lions and Texans have been in the past. So I think those are teams that make the most sense for him. You're right about the Titans. I think he was a better edge rusher than inside linebacker this past year. He's a guy who he's really built off his versatility. But I think that his main skill set ideally would be a situational edge rusher at this point in his career. I think, he's set to make $12.5 million. If you get him for maybe the $6 to $8 million range, I think I'd feel more comfortable with him in that range. He's a guy who's a leader. I think his play was up and down this past year, but I think for the Titans, I think he would be a really good fit for them. If you have, the expectations that he's not going to be your number one pass rusher.
You can follow Cameron Wolfe for all kinds of insights and information on the Miami Dolphins, the NFL, doing a little boxing coverage as well. Hanging out on the undefeated ESPN Sports Center. My man is an absolute stud. The glow up has been surreal. Cam, I'm happy for all your success. I love that you still take some time to come chop it up when you have some time to do so. And we really appreciate you stopping by here on the 615 sessions.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me, Buck. Titans fans, appreciate y'all. Hope everybody's well.